So today, guys, we have a very special guest on our TomoClub Play and Learn series, Lyndsey. And Lyndsey is a dynamic educational leader with over 15-year experience in the public, private, charter schools, and covering all the possible domains from policy making, from policy analysis to program management to staff training to administration. And her true expertise lies in constructing an effective instructional teams which can deliver the student success. And that is actually one of the topics that we are discussing today. So coming to us from Virginia, a very warm welcome to you, Lyndsey.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Absolutely. So during our last conversation, which you were doing just before this, you told me about your sabbatical you took to research, and you just got it published. So congratulations for that. Why don't you give us a little more information about it? And we would love to know about your research.
Sure. So my research was based around lessons learned in social emotional learning after the pandemic, or after a pandemic in general. I kind of looked at the experiences of students from different pandemics throughout time, but then focused, of course, on COVID, as it was the most recent pandemic that we have been and continue to go through. Basically, I found three main lessons from my research. One was that without the partnership between schools, families, and students, that it was really hard to meet all of the needs that the students had. And so ensuring that the families and the schools really worked together in partnerships. In the schools that I did my research with, those were the ones that had the most successful social emotional programs, where families were working together with the schools to meet the needs of the students. The second lesson I found was that we focused a lot on the needs of the students, and for a large portion of our teachers, they were kind of left in the dark.
Yes.
And their social emotional needs at that time were obviously just as important as the students. They were also dealing with illnesses, perhaps death of family members, perhaps increased anxiety. They were dealing with the transition from in-person learning to, within a span of the school that I was in when I was principal still at Pinnacle Academy here in Northern Virginia. Within a span of 2 days, we had to completely transform our system from an in-person system to a 100% online school, and that took a really big toll on our teachers. So I can only imagine it had the same repercussions in schools throughout, the United States and throughout the world. And so that was the main second thing that we learned, that some teachers, not all of them, because there were some schools that did a really good job at meeting the needs of their teachers, but some of them were just kind of left in the dark, and then they had a lot of struggles themselves. And then the third lesson was that we weren't doing enough to prepare our students with these soft skills that they needed kind of ahead of time to deal with social anxieties and different things that came up during COVID. As schools, as an education system, we didn't have enough systems in place to address those needs holistically and ahead of time, so that when these issues came up and when these troubles came up, students and teachers, but particularly students, had a really difficult time regulating their emotions. They had a really difficult time with things such as independent work when they were at home, keeping their videos on, or engaging with the teacher during the lessons, or completing their assignments on time, or cheating, right? All these kinds of things that became so accessible to them during COVID, where they didn't have a teacher who was, sitting in front of them or walking them through the work that they were doing. It was these soft skills that were really lacking. And so my research focused not only on those lessons, but then we also looked into ways that we can put systems in place to better address these issues with the CASEL framework, which is, I know, the basis that you also use to build your system. But then also with the teachings of Dr. Comey, who has several pilot schools throughout the country where they really focused on building that relationship. It was a whole system that focuses on building the relationship relationship between family, students, and school, and really engaging everybody as one community. And so that was just, it wasn't a dissertation that looked to necessarily give concrete solutions. It was looking at the problem as a whole, and then kind of leaving the reader to take what they need from that and then kind of adjust things within their own system. Because as you know, every school is different, every child is different. Every teacher is different and they have their own needs. And so that was kind of the overall framework of my dissertation.
No, I totally agree with you. Actually, these kind of dissertations are also very important because as time flew by, we tend to forget the repercussions are going to be long term. The impact of COVID is yet to be calculated, whether it's learning loss, whether it is the social anxiety, the landslide shift that the educators have to do, the students have to do, is something which we are not even able to calculate right now. So I think that's something we have to add on to that literature, and kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
So today, what we have seen is we often engage in a lot of discussions about the insights from a teacher, a parent, or a student, regarding the factors that leads to their success. But the perspective of school leaders, someone who is constantly firefighting with daily operations and challenges, it's very less heard of what the school leader's perspective is. With your expertise and experience, I would like to, ask, how do you define student success in your terms?
Yeah, so, when I look at student success, I think of a child who has been given all of the tools that they need to survive in society from a holistic perspective. So they've been given the academic knowledge that they need to be successful. But in addition to that, we've also provided them with the soft skills that they need to be active participants in society. Actually, there is a quote, I always think of this actually by Rumi, where it says, like, love is the whole, but we're the pieces. Right. Yeah. So we have to engage in society in that way. We're the pieces, and we have to bring our piece to the puzzle to make the puzzle whole. And so, especially in today's society with like YouTube, honestly, I can log into YouTube right now and I can type in any subject, any topic, and I can learn from an academic point of view most of the things that I need to learn from YouTube. What I can't learn from YouTube is how to be kind to my neighbor. What I can't learn from YouTube is how to be a good friend, how to be a good employee, how to be a good wife, how to be a good sister, how to be a good mom, like all these things that YouTube can't teach me. I think if we make sure that we're focusing on these soft skills within our academic programs, to me, that is what produces the most successful student. So I can have, an above 4.0 GPA. I can encourage my students, or whoever it might be, to take all the AP courses that they can, to take all the dual enrollment courses that they can. But if they're not nice people, that's not going to matter. Nobody's going to want to be around them. Nobody's going to want to work with them. You know what I mean? And so, and making sure that we're kind of partnering these two things together, I think that's what makes a successful student.
No, I totally agree with you. I have ran companies before, and even if you are the smartest in the room, it doesn't really matter if you can't work together. So that's why it becomes very crucial that how are you taking everybody's input as a leader, but at the same time able to derive the conversation in an empathetic manner. And that's a skill. So I used to always ask this when we started TomoClub. My most favorite question to anyone in the world was, what are the skills that help you succeed in life? And regardless of the professions, everybody used to talk about the soft skills, the collaborative, and it was like universal. Hardly anybody would have ever regarded their hard skills as a reason for success. And my next question used to be, when do you think you got a basic hold on these skills? And guess what? The answer is always 30, mid-30s, 40s. And I was like, isn't it a little too late? And they're like, yeah, but you learn it with experiences. But I think the missing angle is more about diligent practice. If I will learn maths by only experience, it's going to take me a long time. But if I'm going to learn math with some guided practice, I think we become masters of it in our very early age. So I think that's a kind of thesis, we also share at TomoClub that how we are doing the diligent practice on these skills. But very well said. And that brings me to the next question. Like, can you tell me any initiative or any program that you implemented at your school which had a significant impact on student success?
Yeah, so the most recent one that we implemented, again at Pinnacle Academy, was something called the College Readiness and Leadership Program. And so this was a program for middle and high school students where they were given a mentor. So they were split up into, let's say, about 4 or 5 students per mentor. The mentors were our teachers. Or staff members. We had some staff members who weren't teachers that also participated and meant or led a group of students. But this was a program that was built into 4 different sections, and it was following the Congressional Award here, where if you earn enough hours and points in this program, you get an award from Congress.
Okay, wow.
So what we did was we focused on their academic well-being, of course, because that's important, that they have good grades, and that they're doing the things they need to. But we also focused on physical activity, sports, making sure that they're exercising, things like that. There was a community service component as well. And then there was a leadership series where we would invite different leaders in the community to come and talk to the students about those soft skills that they would need to be successful in the world outside of school. And then within this community service program, students were they led the initiatives, but they would go to local food banks around and volunteer there. We would go with them we would go with them, but we would make those connections and help them make those connections for them. And we had this program where they're focusing on these 4 different components, and their mentors are tracking the hours for them. And then they have to get those hours kind of verified by a person outside of their mentor, whether it was me a lot of times or somebody else within the school. And then we send their applications for the Congressional Award. And actually, the first year that we did it, we had 3 students complete their gold Congressional Award medal, which means they actually committed over 2,000 hours of volunteer service and many different things that kind of go into it. It didn't happen in 1 year, right? You can't just do 2,000 hours of community service in 1 year. It was something that was followed with them over several years. But they get an actual gold medal from Congress. They're invited there. They get to participate in an award ceremony there. And this really just helps them from that holistic point of view become healthy people. So we're focusing on their academics, but we're also making sure that they're getting the exercise that they need, that they're, we give them advice on like dietary concerns even, because that's really important too. If a student is just eating sugar all the time, they're not going to be able to function in the best way. And then of course the community service aspect, and then also making sure that we're just giving them that one-on-one person where they can bounce things off of with their mentor. So the mentor follows with them. A lot of times this mentor becomes like almost a part of their extended family. The family knows them. Maybe they're having issues at home. The family can go to the mentor a lot. This happened a lot. The family members start going to the mentor and saying, hey, we're really struggling with this. Can you help us? And these kinds of things are kind of fruits that come from these kinds of programs. That is something that I saw not only at Pinnacle, but in the schools that I've kind of worked at throughout my career. They all had a similar type of program, which is why I kind of just took it with me wherever I went, because I saw how successful it was. As a teacher, I was a part of this program as well when we were living in Indiana, and I had 4 girls in particular that I was kind of mentoring. This was back in 2009, and I'm still in contact with those girls.
Wow.
So I still know what they're doing. They got married, they have children now, but we're still in contact because that's kind of the relationship that those kind of programs build that I think are really important.
Wow, that's quite a story, honestly. Like, I remember when I was a child, my school took me to a cookie factory, to the entire manufacturing unit of how cookies are made and packed. And I can remember how profoundly it impacted me to see that. I was jumping around. I was talking to the customer care team. I was talking to the production team.
Mhm.
And that gave me a little insight into what jobs look like. And I did something similar when there was my nephew and a couple of his friends. They wanted to visit my office, and they actually came to our office. They spent the entire day with different teams: marketing team, product development team, the sales team, customer success team. And oh my god, their perspective of things and the what is work actually changed. Now they
Mm.
were like, they had a much more informed decision whether they want to be an engineer, whether they want to be into marketing. At least they got insight of what they have to do. And I think the that kind of exposure is super important at early stages, so that you can create those career paths in life.
Absolutely. That's why I feel like particularly in schools, the college counselors who kind of guide our students through their careers, opening like opportunities for these kinds of things, to see different professions, to see different people actively involved in their professions in the community is really important, because like you said, it helps build that pathway for them.
But you know what? But there has to be some kind of a obstacles. There has to be a balance between academic and holistic development, especially the social emotional well-being. And becomes definitely a debate sometimes, from the parents' side, from educator side, that okay, it's a trade-off. If I'm going to be taking out time from academic, it has to be given to this and all. So how do you manage it as a school leader, explaining the importance of it and yet keeping everybody happy?
Yeah. So I think it's about explaining. First, you have to get buy-in from whoever it is that you're
Yeah.
trying to engage the program within. So I think one of the mistakes that school leaders often make is it becomes like a top-down thing. You have to do this because the district says you have to. But rather, I think if we take the time to talk with the teachers and say, what are the needs that you're noticing amongst your students, and then let's try to find a solution to fill those gaps, because 9 times out of 10 they're going to say, yes, there's an academic achievement gap that is coming from COVID that we need to solve, but then also my students are really lacking in some pretty basic soft skills. One thing in particular that I've seen with the transition from virtual learning back to in-person learning is simple things like raising your hand when you have a question.
Yeah.
Or the schools that I did my research with, they were saying some of our students had to relearn that you can't just get up and get something to eat in the middle of a lesson when you're in person, because they were able to do that at home, right?
Yeah.
And so I think having those conversations with your teachers, with your team, and saying, okay, these are the gaps. What do we need to do to solve these gaps? Social emotional learning is something that you can take, even just, it depends on, of course, the system that you're using. Some of them say just 15 minutes a day is enough. Some of them say, no, let's set aside a time, every week, and let's just make this our time where this is what we're doing, and this is our focus. I think everybody being on the same page and realizing that academics and social emotional learning, they need to be balanced within one another. And if one is off balance, you're going to have a really difficult time creating that sense of equilibrium within your classroom.
Yeah.
Students, especially in the young ages, I'm so sorry, they need somebody to guide them through these things. We can't expect a second grader or a third grader to just know some of these skills. Somebody has to guide them through and walk them through. And if you have a middle and high school student who hasn't had the opportunity for somebody to walk them through, they're going to need that too. And so I just think engaging our teachers, making them feel heard, getting them actively involved in the process, and then providing some of these or recommending some of these solutions, trying the solutions out together as a team. What worked well, what didn't work well, what can we do better? I think that is where you get that buy-in, and then it becomes easier to implement the programs in the long run in the schools.
Actually, I was picking up from that point itself. When you said in the first answer that it has to be opt-in by the student or the parent, and the second time you said it has to be a guided practice. Why I have a little contrarian view on that is, as a child, I became very academically inclined. And what happened is that slowly I stopped participating in a lot of competitions or inter-school events or all those social events which can actually help develop these skills. And I became very academically focused. But when I entered graduation, I felt out of place. I felt everybody was so super developed holistically. They were able to talk to anyone. They were able to be so confident. And I only know how to learn. And I thought that was never enough. So at that point of time, I wished somebody could have, held my hand and said, no, you have to have balance of it. You can't be just academically. And it took me, but that I did. I tried to fill that gap in college. It was very difficult, but I made myself go through several clubs, go through events, so that I can fill up that gap. And so, yeah, I have both views. It cannot be always opt-in. It has to be guided and explained, as you said. Talking to the teachers and parents have to be awareness has to be created that because you will know at the end of the day, even those parents who are working out in some companies or in personal life also, they will know that it's not going to be only academics who's going to help it out. It's going to be a mix of both. So I totally agree with that. And that's the challenge. But as a school leader, that is the job, how to drive everybody together.
That's right. And I think when you focus on making sure that the people who you're working with, one of my main goals was I just tried to be empathetic and to be kind and to be a leader where my teachers knew if I needed something, I can go to, everybody called me Miss Lyndsey. It was just been something that stuck with me my entire career. I can go to Miss Lyndsey and she'll help me. And if she can't help me, she'll find somebody who can. And I think when you focus to make your approach in this way, not that I was a perfect leader, we all have our faults, right? But people tend to take what you have to say more seriously when they know that you also take what they have to say into consideration as well. And I think building that partnership between leadership and the teachers is really important because the teachers also need to feel supported and they need to feel heard. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones with the students in the classroom all day. And so they have a unique perspective that I'm not going to be able to know if I don't speak with them. But as you said, making sure that we're keeping that balance, it's really, really important. Sometimes there are things in schools where it is top down. We don't always have options on everything, but within the areas where we do have the options, keeping, like you said, that balance of information or that balance of knowledge is really important because as you said, some of us, I'm also very introverted. And so I understand exactly what you mean, where you say, I can just focus on these books and then I don't have to talk to anybody and I don't have to go to the social event and I don't have to do that, but that's not healthy, right? We know now that we need to have both sides. And there's another kind of trend that worries me a little bit. And I think I've actually spoken to you about this the last time we spoke, where wellness and well-being has kind of taken this turn into where it's, I'm the only thing that matters. Nobody else around me is important. As long as I'm happy, it doesn't matter what's happening around me. But that's not how the world functions. And so balancing that as well is really important, where we have to make sure we're not raising a generation of children who think they're the only thing that matters when there's an entire world around us that has to continue to work and we need to be able to do this together.
Yeah, absolutely. And lastly, I would love to ask you some resources or books that you recommend for school leaders specifically who want to, deepen their understanding of student success or effective leadership in education.
Oh, yes. Okay. So there's, I very highly recommend everybody looking into James P. Comer. So he was the one, and I can Comer. So he has done a lot of research and a lot of input into building this relationship between schools and families and community. And the success that he's had in the schools that he's implemented this program and has been tremendous because it looks at everything holistically. So that's great. That would be one of the first things that I would recommend. people look into, because he really did just a really good job at kind of building those relationships together. There is a book. It's a very easy read. I'm sure you've even heard of it before. It's called The Energy Bus.
Yeah.
Really, yeah, it's a great book. Like I said, it's an easy read, but it really just focuses on bringing that positive energy to the school as a leader. And then, of course, there's The Highly Effective Habits of Leaders as well by Covey, which is a great book. Some of these are like, oh yeah, we know them, but they're kind of there for a reason, right? They're the books everybody knows for a reason, because as a leader, I think it's important for us to know our own habits and our own characteristics, and the habits and characteristics that make other people successful, and then marrying those two things together and implementing them within our own systems. So I would say start there, but honestly, there are so many good books that talk about leadership and positive relationships that you can build with your team members. I always just tell people, find what speaks to you and go with it. So some people really like transformational leadership. Some people really like servant leadership. Some people really like other types of leadership. Take what speaks to you, see the pros and cons to them, and then run with it and do what you think fits your personality best. Because oftentimes I see, I'm sure you've seen the meme on social media where somebody's trying to take a suitcase and put it in the cabinets on top of the airplane, but they're putting it in the wrong way, so it's not fitting. So it's really hard sometimes to try to force something onto you if it doesn't fit your space, if it doesn't fit the shape of your soul, of your heart, of your personality. So it's important to find what speaks to you, but then just making sure that we're balancing our own positives and negatives within us. Because ultimately, as leaders, we're the ones where people look to see how we handle difficult situations, and then just modeling that for other people. That was a really long-winded answer. I'm sorry, but
no, I love it. And honestly, I want to add two of my personal learnings. I'm not sure how many of you will relate to it, but one is that leaving a book because you're not feeling it is okay. So I used to feel the guilt of powering through a book which was not appealing to me. I think the moment I started dropping them off was a great feeling. And
yes.
Secondly, of course, where you said that these books are pretty famous, but revisiting them is equally important, because you need to remember them. And whenever you're reading the book second time or third time, I don't know what, but you always get new outcomes. You always have a new takeaway, and which I love the most about the books part. And talking about resources, of course, I will just insert TomoClub a little bit here also,
Please.
that the same idea behind a resource which can be used by educators and students in a more friendly and an easy way is the game-based curriculum. There has been a lot of debates about games being addictive and screen time, and focusing more on the idea of captivating students' attention rather than educational. But that is something that we are trying to bring it from the gray area, that it can actually teach a lot of skills. And by engaging students in various lesson plans and games. And that's what we are doing at TomoClub. And it's been going super exciting with so many schools we're working with. And hopefully we'll keep on engaging more on this. But thank you so much, Lyndsey, for your time for today's session.
Yes,
Your insights and expertise were truly enriching our discussion. And I just loved that conversation today.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here and kind of see that you hold similar thoughts, and that gives me a lot of hope for the future of our society, for the future of the world. Honestly, that people are giving more importance, the needed importance that social emotional learning has in the well-being of our students.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. Let's catch up soon again.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.